name's Jason Marshall. Welcome. This is a course called Applied Musicianship. This is about how to learn music in case you find yourself frustrated with the commonly available ways to learn music. I want to talk about how to gain clarity as a music student when you find yourself frustrated learning music. I had really good teachers growing up, and I'm saying from the ages of 7 years old until I left for college. I had great teachers. And then I found myself frustrated when I went to college for a lot of different reasons. But I realized that over time, my learning style was different than what was typically assumed to be the learning style of a music student. I struggled because I knew that I liked music, but I could not relate to the way it was being explained to me in college. My suggestion is that we use music to teach music rather than using music theory to teach music. Now, if theory is a way that you understand music, if that's how, if it helps you understand the pieces that put together collectively become music, that's fine. For me, I always struggled with a theoretical explanation of music because I could not relate to any of the verbiage. None of the people in the books that I was given I could relate to. None of those experiences resonated with me. I knew that if I could figure out my learning style, which was definitely different than the way I was being taught in college, I could learn music. I found that if I could get around people who could play music the way I wanted to play music, then I could learn music. So I needed teachers who could play. This is to say, I learned music from musicians. That sounds obvious, but very often we are in positions where we learn music from music teachers, which should not be a distinction, but I found in some instances it is a distinction. If I could get around people who could show me what I wanted to learn by playing it, I could get it. And then all I had to do was listen to it over and over and be around people who could do it, and then I could get it. But in school, they would write down on a board, they would give me a piece of paper, they would show it to me in a book, and I would struggle with that. I would call that a more demonstrative, or rather my style was more demonstrative. The way it's typically taught in school is something I would refer to as a granular method or molecular method. Like, I'm going to show you the very smallest pieces, and then I'll show you larger pieces once you have a grasp of the smaller pieces of what will become music in theory. But in reality, I already like music. I already understood what I wanted to sound like. I just needed to know how to get from where I was to what I wanted to sound like. And I found out over time that that would be to do with um, being around it, listening to it constantly, having a quite focused listening diet of music. So, you know, I just want to help people who find music school frustrating because suddenly in the last month, the whole world is in an era where we have to relearn how to teach and relearn how to learn. But that gives those of us who found the old way frustrating another opportunity to develop our understanding. And, you know, I'm going to talk about music because that's what I've spent my life learning. But you might find that these techniques work in other fields of interest. We're going to talk about how to develop your sound, which is to say, your signature, the thing that you are most recognized by as a musician is your sound. Now, my mother sang to me every day for the first 18 years of my life. That is the most impactful thing I think anyone can experience, and it's the most informative element in my life to do with my sound. We're going to talk about reflexes, which is to say, as a functioning musician, what do you do in a musical situation? Very often, if we learn in an educational setting, we can only function in an educational setting. And I mean a traditionally, what we traditionally mean by an educational setting. We're going to talk about reflexes. We're going to talk about rhythm. And I just have some suggestions about a more organic way of learning how to read rhythms, how to understand rhythm. I want to talk about awareness. Now, awareness is to do with, some people will say, what is, which is to say, what should I be listening for to inform my performance? What part of the rhythm section do I listen to? How do I listen to other people? Generally, your awareness in music. Musicianship, we're going to talk about musicianship, which is basically how you go about being a musician, what to wear on a gig, how to book a gig, how to negotiate fees, what things in the process of, or, you know, in the logistics, what you should consider when asking or when charging people for money. I don't like to say ask because it's not a donation, it's a business transaction. How to develop taste. This is the thing that I find is almost completely ignored in the educational environment. How to develop taste as a musician. That's going to serve you very, very well as a professional. Guided listening. This is actually how we develop taste. We're going to talk about guided listening, which is to say, as a student, you need to be told what to listen to, who to listen to, and what to listen to, what to listen for, rather. We're going to talk about, as a professional, how some of the ways you can construct your life and lifestyle that will lead to a more successful experience as a professional and a longer experience. You know, a way to develop longevity and wellness as your career develops. Let's see. I'm learning how to make digital content, so y'all bear with me as I go through this process myself. I'm going to focus one of these lessons on just wellness. Our lives are all different now because wellness is suddenly the most important thing. In fact, wellness was always the most important thing, but now many of us are faced with some very frightening realities around our wellness or lack thereof, unfortunately. I want to spend one of the lessons talking about what I would call the monastic vows of a musician. As a musician, very much of it is answering the call of a musician. It's like it's not so different from people who acknowledge a religious sort of unction and how you just have to be a musician. I mean, it's not necessarily a very lucrative thing. It takes very much longer to learn once you learn the style that works best for you. But we're going to spend some time around how to most effectively acknowledge and perform and live out your monastic vows as a musician. And some of that will be to do with the rituals, practicing, why we practice. We're going to talk about how long you should practice. Some people can practice for hours at a time. Some people can practice for 10 minutes at a time, and they can develop at similar rates. But how you learn, the other part of that is how you should practice. You practice for, in a way that creates the fastest and the most effective absorption rate for the information. And I'm really not going in any particular order, but I'll say that we're going to talk about pitch, and by that I mean how to learn how to generate pitches. Very much of what is thought of as an excellent musician is someone who can hear something, hear a pitch, and the context of the pitch and recreate it. So we're going to talk about how to do that. And we're going to talk about transcribing and more along the lines of, yes, transcribing, which is to say listen to it and write it down. And as part of that, we're going to remove some of the mystery around transcribing, but if you follow me, acknowledge the alchemy in the spell that is writing something down. So we're going to talk about that as well. I want you all to get what you can from this series, and I look forward to helping you learn music.